First time I met Jessica was at the Hollywood Holiday Parade, and 98 Degrees was performing at the parade. And she had recently signed with our manager.
So the manager wanted to introduce me to Nick because Nick wanted to write songs for my first album. So, you know, I went, and of course I brought my family because my family goes everywhere with me. And at this point, they definitely went everywhere with me. And it was my mom, my dad, my sister.
I wasn't able to really check Jessica out the way I think I probably would have liked, but I kept catching myself looking over.
He had another girl with him at the time. He had another girl, you know, he had his arm around somebody else.
Well, I mean, these huge, like, you know, hill figure overalls at the time, you know, and everyone else is like in real form-fitting stuff. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't want to be the one in the group who's, you know, the fat kid.
He was wearing big overalls with a big sweatshirt underneath, and he just wanted to make sure that I knew that there was something really good underneath.
And I remember telling her, you know, I'm not fat or anything, you know, I don't know why they put me in these huge baggy overalls. I was really trying to make a good impression. I was trying to tell her I had all these songs I'd written that I thought would, you know, be good for her. She was putting her album together, so I was using the business angle as an in.
So, you know, I didn't really look at it as like an opportunity to meet him and to hook up with him, but he was definitely the one out of the four guys that I was completely attracted to.
Well, I remember thinking that she was just really, you know, she was really cute. She was, you know, had a great personality, very spunky and peppy.
I definitely felt that he was hitting on me from the first words that were spoken. You know, it was like that immediate attraction. You want to find them wherever they are in the room, and you know, he definitely tried to impress me with his first words.
The next time I saw her was early January, right after the New Year, and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, your mission for tonight is to get me in good with this girl." And once you tell my mom something like that, it's, you know, she will run her mouth. Basically, she will beat you into submission just because you don't want to hear her talk anymore. So she went after Jessica and just, you know, oh, Nick's such a great guy. I'm so proud of him, and what a good son. Well, and just talked me up all night.
Nick really tried to pursue me, I think, more than I tried to pursue him. I'm the kind of girl I'm definitely a huge flirt, but I flirt with everybody in the room, and I don't just like focus on one guy. Even if that one guy is the one that I'm trying to impress, I want to play hard to get.
I was definitely the pursuer, but I was pursuing in a very conservative, don't lose, you know, face manner.
I was playing hard to get in the whole kissing area too. So like the first 4 or 5 dates that we had, he would always try to go in for the kiss or try to kiss me, and I would, you know, I knew that every girl would they'd throw themselves at him, you know, and I wanted to be something different for him, and I didn't let him kiss me for like the first 5 dates.
The first time we ever did kiss was at her friend's house in the valley. She lived like in Riverside, you know, in a horse stable basically. The people she lived with had a horse, and she lived back there we were over visiting her, and then we went out in the car, and it was raining, and we ended up kissing in her car in the rain, finally.
I had to take him back to his hotel because at that time he didn't live in Los Angeles, and we were in the car, and my favorite song came on, "Take My Breath Away" by Berlin, and it just felt right, and he went in for the kiss. It was great.
I think her favorite song was playing, you know, a real cheesy, you know, Hollywood moment there. We'd been dating for about 3 years, just a little over 3 years. And, you know, when you break up, it's tough to sometimes figure out why it happened. I think it was a very stressful time in my life in terms of career and putting together a tour and trying to support an album.
Nick and I dated 3 years before we split up. We split up for 5 months. It was that time in my life where I was extremely selfish, and I hate to even like go back and think about it, because I try to block that whole 5 months out of my life. It was during the release of Irresistible, and you know, it was just one of those things where I thought that I needed to date other guys and I needed to see, you know, what was out there.
And I think at the root of it all, too, is that I had dated Jessica since she was 18 years old, you know? And I was much more comfortable with what I wanted in life and the place I was in my life than I think she was. And in the back of her mind, I think there had to be questions as to whether, you know, could I possibly, you know, be the one she's gonna spend the rest of her life with?
I needed to date celebrities and the whole thing, and I was in for a rude awakening. The guys that I ended up dating, I fell back in the pattern of, you know, they didn't respect me and what I stood for, and I just got caught up into some really yucky situations, and I realized this whole time, I didn't realize it until after September 11th. Everything in my life was put into perspective.
Throughout the summer, we were broken up. Jessica and I was on the road, I was on tour, and it was still a part of me that was obviously trying to hang on to that relationship. And though I had moved on and was dating other people, I was really still invested in her. And you know, I'm a very emotional person, and so you know, it was kind of a torturous thing to still hang on to something that's really not there anymore, you know?
Nick was in New York during September 11th, and we had broken everything off completely the night before. He was like, I'm not holding on anymore. You know, I don't want to talk to you. You're out of my life. I'm moving on. I'm dating other people. I realized that I was out there searching for something that I already had.
See this pillar of smoke, we think it's pollution. What it really is the World Trade Center burning. And so being in New York is all that's happening. You know, I start to make calls, and the first person, even after the night before, the first person I call is Jessica. And you know, I let her know what was going on, and she said, you know, first thing out of her mouth was, you know, you gotta come to me, you gotta come to me.
Anyway, he was just like fed up with it, and so he broke things off that night. I remember I went to sleep crying, and then the next call I got was Nick. It was September 11th, and everything was happening, and he was there, and I wanted him to come home immediately. You know, I don't know what it was, crying myself to sleep, or him being there and me not being with him. And you know, I just immediately wanted him to be with me.
I remember being in the airport, Newark Airport, on a rental car shuttle bus and thinking, God, this is just the most horrible day. But I couldn't help but be just a little bit excited, and even in the midst of all that, because for the first time in, you know, half a year, I really felt like, you know, Jessica loved me, and I could feel it in her voice.
I wanted to get engaged immediately after Nick and I had split up and got back together. That's all I could think about, was that I wanted to get married. This was it. I never wanted to, you know, be interested in any other guy. And Nick, you know, I had some growing up to do before he could look at me as a wife.
We probably got back together. I made Jessica sweat it out a little bit, you know, so we didn't really get back together till like October, you know. And after a couple months, it started to feel like, all right, we've done all the dating there is to do. You know, we found out as much about each other as I think there is to find out.
He made me start, like, kind of seeing what I needed to do around the house or whatever. He wanted me to become a woman before he got married to me. He didn't want to get married to a little girl, so that was his whole thing. So, of course, I went and I bought cookbooks, and I started taking up cooking, and I started trying to, you know, do my laundry a little bit and fold my clothes and that whole thing.
The next step is to get married. And so I decided to be cool to propose to her at Christmas time, you know? And Jessica's always had this fantasy of being proposed to on a hot air balloon. And she'd made this perfectly clear to me.
He had had the ring at Christmas and he was gonna propose to me then, but something happened. I don't really know. You're gonna have to talk to him about that.
The last step in this whole scenario was I'm gonna talk to her dad and ask his blessing. And this guy just scares the bejesus out of me, you know, and you know, tells me that she's not ready and all this stuff. Basically, I swept it under the rug, you know. I said, all right, it's not time. Finally, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go for it.
I was performing at the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, and I had taken my grandparents and all of my dancers and my family.
So I knew that Jessica was singing at the Pro Bowl in the beginning of February. And I thought, well, what a better place to do it in Hawaii.
And Nick wanted to take me on a romantic cruise, like on a little, on a catamaran, on a sailboat.
Basically told him that, you know, I'd always respect his daughter, and you know, and I loved her to death, want the best for her. You know, obviously we're not perfect, we're gonna need help along the way, that kind of thing. And he gave me his blessings. So that night, took her out on the cruise and was kind of looking out of the corner of my eye at the sun, just waiting for it to hit the horizon perfectly, and then, you know, pulled the ring out and went for it.
So I think I said, are you kidding? And he's like, no, I'm not kidding. You know, I'm holding the ring right here. And of course I said yes. And the skipper guy had no clue what was going on. And so he comes around and he's like, and this is where Pearl Harbor, you know. And here we are, like, crying, and he turned around like, what's wrong? And of course I'm like, we're engaged. And he said that nobody's ever done that on his boat before. And then he started videotaping us and the whole thing. We were engaged for 7 months. It wasn't very long because I didn't want like a year-long engagement because I was so excited and like I wanted to immediately plan it, and I didn't want to have to wait any longer, and I didn't want to have to stress about it any longer. So we just, you know, we wanted a pretty short engagement. Plus we were ready to have sex.
So we used a lady named Mindy Weiss, who's, you know, has done a ton of celebrity weddings, very successful at it, and I was very involved. I think to Jessica's surprise, at, you know, every meeting I was there, no matter what it was about. It was always Tina, Jessica, and I said very little, mind you. It was mostly my involvement was to protest a budget, or, you know.
The budget is Nick's area in our relationship, period. It was definitely his area in the wedding, and it's his area now. He tries not to spend any money because he knows that I'm gonna spend it all. So, poor guy, I feel bad, but I've just never had to like really budget myself because I've always, you know, lived on my own, and I have my credit card, and I don't ever check how much money I have in the bank. I just, you know, I know my business manager will call me if I'm doing something wrong.
And I found this place called the Barton Creek Golf Resort and Conference Center in just outside Austin. We drove back down the next day and looked at it, and it was perfect. And
especially when you're planning this one day, it's like little things to him that girls notice, like he doesn't care about, you know, like a certain number of candles or a certain number of flowers or the cute little napkin ring or the charger that goes under the plate. I mean, he would never spend, I mean, he would probably have like plastic plates, cups, and forks, you know? He doesn't care. He doesn't care about that thing. But he knew I did, so he gave in.
The wedding, everything was planned. Everything was taken care of. All the details were ironed out. All the last-minute emergencies had been fixed. Wake up the morning of the wedding, open up my shades, and it's just miserable, gray, drizzle, rain. And I told Jessica, no matter what happens, if it rains on our wedding day, you will not be in a bad mood because I'm not spending all this money to have, you know, Mother Nature screw it up, you know?
And the rain actually just made it incredibly romantic because they ended up buying a lot of candles, and it just was kind of very Romeo and Juliet, and it was very surreal. And the best moment is to walk down the aisle, like the doors open, and you know, like my breath was completely taken away because of of the moment and how beautiful the moment was.
And then all her bridesmaids come down and they're smiling at me, and it's like everyone's happy, and I'm just trying to keep it together. And then doors close again, and they open up, and she's standing there, and it was just like, it was like a shockwave came through the door and just, hit me in the face.
Nick's, his expression is like the most adorable thing I've ever seen, because he was completely like, I mean, our whole thing is, we love the song "Take My Breath Away" by Berlin. So everything that like takes your breath away, that's what it reminded me of. He just looked like in awe, and I know Nick, and he was crying and he couldn't hold it together, and that's romantic. That's cute to me.
It was like gasping for air. I'm just trying to tell myself to hold it together and not embarrass myself on stage in front of all these people. But when she finally made it to the stage, that's when I knew everything was gonna be okay. It was like I just wanted her. I hated being up there by myself. I just wanted her to be there with me. And once that happened, I was cool.
It was one of those things where I didn't look around to see who was all in the room, because I knew who was there, and I just zeroed in on Nick's eyes, and just the whole experience of walking to my future, like from my past to my future, was a really great experience.
And I don't remember anybody in the audience. I couldn't tell you where one person was sitting. It was really a very special moment between she and I, and I just remember just looking at her, and I couldn't take my eyes off of her, and it just felt like I was staring into her soul.
I think the first thing I thought of after we walked out, I think you're just overwhelmed. You're married. Like, you're married. And I loved the fact that I could sign the guest book at the reception and sign Jessica Lachey. Like, little things like that, that's what girls love.
That was just, when they finally say introducing, Mr. and Mrs. Nick Lachey, it was like relief for me, Thank God I made it through it. Knees didn't give out, everything went the way it's supposed to go. And yeah, it's probably the, happiest moment of your life, It's what you kind of dream about doing with the person that you love, and it was awesome.
The reception was great because everybody just had a blast and danced the whole time, and it was overwhelming for both Nick and I, because first of all, I was in an amazing gown, but the thing weighed like 30 pounds, so I was having to take Advil.
The band was great, the food was great, the cake, both the cakes were great. You always hear that you don't have a chance to sit down, but it's just so true. I don't remember eating a thing.
So Nick and I didn't ever get to eat. We had no clue what the food really tasted like, because by the time we got to it, it was cold.
The first dance was funny because we go out for the first dance, and it was supposed to be Crazy Love, sung by Neil McCoy, and Walter Afanasieff was gonna play keys. Well, I guess these guys are at the table talking and carrying on, and here's Jessica out in the middle of the dance floor, and they're in the audience still, and not realizing that it's time.
Things that stuck out, I mean, of course, the cutting of the cake and feeding it to each other, those are the pictures that I love, and the first dance where the thing about the first dance is that the whole time you can watch footage of the ceremony, and you'll see that, like, I'm looking in Nick's eyes and I want to kiss him so bad.
We stayed in the resort, in the presidential suite upstairs, and we kind of advanced ahead of time what we wanted it to look like, and had candles everywhere and rose petals everywhere. They'd sent up some some food because we hadn't eaten, and it was great. It was a great night in a lot of ways, obviously, but you're so exhausted. Here you talk all this garbage about, we're gonna go all night, it's gonna be this, this great thing, or, and you just don't have it in you at that point. She turned to me and said, I can't do it anymore. I'm tired. We gotta go to sleep.
We went on a honeymoon. I think we slept maybe 1 hour 1 hour, and we literally had to get up at 6 a.m. and go catch a flight to Fiji. We had to get on another plane and go out to Turtle Island. I think that's where we kind of made the mistake. We should have just stayed in Fiji, in that part, and not gone out to the exclusive island, where there's lots of creatures around. And, you know, we were so excited about this honeymoon because we wanted to stay in this bungalow.
Off you go. They take you to your beret. And it looked great. You know, it was like a little hot tub, you know, a nice bed. It looked wonderful. And, you know, the day went on. We went and got in the ocean, and then had dinner, you know, the two of us out on the boat dock in the moonlight. It was great.
The first night on our honeymoon was very romantic. You know, Nick had made a love-making CD full of Sade and Maxwell. I mean, he was ready, he was prepared for a week of total lovemaking, to make up for lost time. And so, you know, we start making out, whatever, and I have my I have different lingerie for every night, of course. I have even like 2 pieces for every day, because I got so much.
Get back to the room. You know, it's like the first real night of our honeymoon. We start, you know, kissing and getting into it a little bit, and you hear this rustling on the ceiling, and the ceiling is this thatched, you know, kind of a thatched roof thing. And all of a sudden I hear Jessica squeal like a pig, just screaming, you know.
We're making out, and then all of a sudden, you know, I hear something, and then I feel something. Like I hear something like hit the fan and then fall on top of me. And literally, it was a roach. I kid you not. It was like this big. And of course, it lands straight on my chest, and I'm screaming and freaking out. You know, Nick would try to touch me after that, and I was so jumpy. Like I was just like, I couldn't, because I was so scared.
We went to another beret that they deemed roach-free. And sure enough, I think the first night we moved there, everything was cool. So we thought, okay, you know, it's done now. Just when you kind of try and dismiss it, then the next night it happens again, you know?
It's not that our honeymoon was horrible, because the days were amazing, but the nights, like, was nowhere even close to romantic, because I couldn't even deal. So we ended up having to, you know, leave and going to a hotel. Picking out the house was our first big decision together, and it was a fun decision, you know? It's put a lot of stress on us and a lot of strain on us, because, you know, the monthly mortgage and the whole thing, taking out loans, doing the whole thing. I mean, I had never been a part of any of this.
I don't think Jessica truly understood all that was involved in the move and how actually painful it was and how heavy some of the things were. And I think her first impression was that she didn't necessarily like where some of the stuff had been placed, or, you know. And so she didn't think about what was coming out of her mouth before it came out, you know. And she started to complain, and no one was in the mood to hear her complain about anything at that point, so. You want to see her come out with a tray of lemonade. Oh, thanks for working so hard, guys. Here, you know, make you some iced tea. It didn't really work out that way.
The move, I kind of wanted nothing to do with, because I didn't support the fact that Nick and Drew were gonna do it themselves. I'm very thankful for Drew. You know, I'm not giving him a hard time or anything, but I mean, we could have just hired movers, and we wouldn't have all the nicks and scratches on our walls, and it would have been a lot easier.
Jessica doesn't necessarily care how things get done, and she doesn't want to know how they get done. They mysteriously have gotten done her whole life, you know? So she doesn't understand all that's involved in moving.
There was a lot that was revealed when we began living together. You know, I just thought we were gonna have a housekeeper like I had in my condo, and she was gonna do my laundry and, you know, clean up after me and the whole thing, like I was used to. And Nick didn't want to spend the money on a housekeeper and thought that he could do it himself.
From the time she was a little girl to, you know, to now. And, you know, that's the first big thing, I think, is the fact she's never lived really on her own and had to fend for herself, and, you know, had to balance her own checkbook and do those things. She's never had to do it. And I think the other big thing is that we come from a different background in terms of our family lives, and that she, her parents are still together after 25 years, which is great. And her mom has typically always taken care of her and her sister and done most everything for them, picked up their rooms and done their laundry. I come from a different place in that my parents divorced when I was in the first grade. So, for a lot of my young life, my mom was a single mother.
The whole adjusting in that area has been the toughest for us. That's where a lot of our fights are so shallow. I mean, they're so stupid. It's about decorating and it's about cleaning, like who would have thought that's what we would fight about, but it's what we fight about.
Having a housekeeper, I've gotten a bum rap for, and she's gone on Oprah and told Oprah I wouldn't let her get a housekeeper. I wouldn't let her do this. That's complete crap. I don't like to clean toilets any more than the next guy, but all I said is I didn't want a complete stranger coming into our home and having a key and the code and everything.
Well, I think I ended up winning because I ended up becoming more clean, which was nice. Nick taught me to grow up a little bit, but I also ended up getting a maid at the end of the day. And, after I was overwhelmed for a couple days, there were a couple days in there that I was really overwhelmed and had 20 loads of laundry, and Nick was like, oh, let's just get a maid, You know
what? I love a lot of things about being married. I think the biggest thing to me is just with Jessica. She's, I really feel like she's my soulmate, and there's no one I'd rather, it's a comfort factor, there's no one I'd rather lay on the couch with and watch a movie and have go to sleep on my shoulder. And, she's like my baby.
Being married is definitely everything I thought it would be, but it's different too in a lot of ways. I knew that it would be amazing and that it would be fun, and I knew that there would be fights, but it's not the fairy tale that you dream of when you're a little girl. You know what I mean? It's not like you're having picnics every day and, walking along the beach every day, and that, it's not like this huge romantic scene. It's like, it's really two lives coming together and trying to be one, and there's a lot of adjustments to make, and I don't think I realized how many adjustments that there would be to make, but it's worth it.
I just can't imagine having those experiences with anybody else. And so the best part about being married is being able to have that all the time, and everything in my life has now become her life, and everything in her life has become my life. And, we are so ingrained in each other's, experiences. I think that's probably the most special thing, just sharing everything together.
The one big thing in marriage is that before you make a decision, you have to talk to your spouse. And, when you're single, it's, you make your own decisions, and that's what it is. And it doesn't really affect, your boyfriend very much, But if you make a decision on your own when you're married, it definitely affects your husband.
It's all about compromise. It's all about sacrificing. And as long as both parties in the marriage are compromising, it's cool. It's a fair deal. It's when one party starts to give a little more than the other, and that's when you start to get resentment and stuff.
I do think that opposites definitely attract. There's something very intriguing about somebody who is completely different than you and has a different view on life and has a different comfort zone. And that's one of the things that really drew me to Nick.
I do. I think Jessica and I really do complement each other very well. And all the things that seem opposite about each one of us, I think when you put us together, create a pretty well-balanced situation, And hopefully the things that I'm not good at, the things I'm weak in, she helps bring to the table, and vice versa, the things that she doesn't necessarily excel in, I bring to the table.
I'm absolutely in love with my husband. You know, everything about him I love, even the stuff that drives me up the walls. I still love that about him, you know, that he can make me feel so many different emotions, that he can make me, you know, happier than I've ever been.
It's hard to put into words. And there's so many dimensions of love that I feel for, you know, for Jessica. And it's hard to put into words where every one of those things kind of exists. You know, I love her. I love her for who she is as a person, and I love to, you know, I love to see her laugh. I love the free spirit that lives in her.
I'm infatuated with him. He's always been it for me. Ever since our first date, I ran home and told my mom I'm marrying this guy. You know, I knew that I was gonna love him for the rest of my life, and it was just one of those, you know, beautiful connections that it's rare when people have it. You know, and we definitely have embraced it and taken good care of it.
I love the way she has influenced so many other people's lives with her positivity and her opportunities to influence as an artist. I think she's done more than she even would recognize for other people, and I love that about her. I think she's smoking hot, which doesn't hurt anything.